Welcome back, everybody, to this episode of the Open Concept podcast, where we are breaking down unnecessary walls and barriers that stand in the way of greatness, the podcast by New Vision Projects. Now, we have had some amazing guests on our podcast, and I'm so thankful for that. But today, it is just you and me, my friends. Me, your host, Brandon Smith, you, the listener. And today we're talking about the difference between a renovation or a build that goes smoothly and one that turns into an absolute nightmare. And here's what most people don't know. Professional construction firms follow 8 specific principles that homeowners rarely understand. And I want to say that most companies don't even follow these principles or know that they should follow these principles, but they should. And I'm going to walk you through the exact framework that successful project managers use. Principles defined by the Project Management Institute. And these aren't trendy tips or design ideas. These are the foundational systems that determine whether your project finishes on time, on budget, and without destroying your sanity. We'll use real stories, the problems, and solutions so that you know exactly what you're in for. Now, I should preface this. These stories, I'm using some made-up names. I'm not using real names of people. These are real situations that have come up, real situations that I understand. I've talked to people. I've heard, I've been doing this now over 15 years. And the amount of horror stories I've heard is absolutely insane. But I'm not going to expose anybody specifically on this podcast. Principle number 1, objective and goals. So let's look at this. The Thompsons hired a contractor for what they thought was a straightforward bathroom renovation. Budget, around $40,000. Timeline, hopefully by the end of summer. Design, we'll figure it out as we go. 6 months later, they're $65,000 deep, and they have no end in sight. Every conversation starts with, I thought we agreed. Nobody's on the same page. Contractors frustrated. And contractors, if you're listening to this, I know you've been on the receiving end of it probably many times. And it's because we're not following these principles. And that family feels taken advantage of. The project has become a daily source of stress for you and your customer. This is why Principle 1 exists. Understanding your objective before you start swinging hammers. Right? So what exactly are you trying to accomplish? Not, we want a nicer bathroom. That's too vague. What's the real objective? Are you renovating to increase the value of your home before you're selling it? Or are you looking to accommodate aging in place? Fix a broken promise to your spouse? I don't know, but understanding the why shapes everything else. And then you start developing what we call SMART goals. Goals that are specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and timely. You've probably heard that before many, many times. And if you haven't, well, look it up. There's lots of people that do a better job of going through that and explaining it than I do. That is not what we're looking at achieving right here on this podcast. Check those SMART goals out. But when I talk about timely, we're not talking about hopefully by summer, but substantial completion by June 15th with a 2-week buffer, not around $40,000, but $42,000 fixed price with a $6,000 contingency fund. Not figure it out as we go, but finalize all selections by March 1st. This means asking hard questions up front. What's a want versus a need? Are we doing fixed cost or cost plus? Either is going to work as long as you and your contractor understand the terms of the agreement, and it really based on the type of project that you are and the risk that you're exposed to will determine your contract type. In a lot of cases, is there work that's dependent on the weather, right? When are we renovating? Are these things that could affect the overall schedule? They do come up. This is the reality that we live in every single day. And what is our drop dead timeline? right? Your goals and objectives create this foundation. Without this clarity, every decision becomes a negotiation and every conversation becomes a conflict. Professional project managers spend significant time on this phase because they know the best way to avoid problems is to prevent them before the work starts. Get everyone aligned on what success looks like in writing before anyone shows up with a tool belt. Which brings me to my next principle, number 2, budgeting. Michael had $100K to spend. He got quotes from 3 contractors. One came in at about $98K and perfect, right? He signed it immediately. 4 months in, he's facing an extra $20K in unexpected costs, structural issues they discovered, permit fees that weren't included, upgraded materials because the originals were discontinued, right? These things happen. But now your customer, or you, if you are a customer, you're listening to this, can feel the pain of, oh man, my line of credit that I'm using to build or fund this renovation project is slowly starting to run out. And no one's happy. And the contractor feels blame for things that are out of their control. And contractors, I'm sure that you have felt this as well, right? But Mr. Michael over there, he feels deceived. And the truth, neither party properly budgeted for reality. Professional budgeting isn't about finding the lowest number. It's about understanding constraints and making intelligent trade-offs. Your budget is one of the biggest constraints that will impact your ability to achieve your project goals. And this is where you need to face reality. Teams are constantly being asked to do more with less, and you're no different. When you receive your approved budget, carefully consider project priorities. Determine which aspects are essential and which can be reduced or eliminated while still reaching your goals. And this might mean choosing standard grade windows instead of triple pane, although that's a story for another time. I always am a big fan of the triple pane windows, but sometimes they're just not there. Or the countertops that you really want versus just like it just doesn't make sense to put these ones in. Maybe you have to make those types of decisions. Or doing the deck next year instead of now, right? The budget must account for contingencies, and typically we're looking at 10-15% of the total depending on the project complexity. It must include things like building permit fees, design fees, and interim living costs if you're displaced, right? But we build this in our CRM system, and just as a side note, all builders at this point should have some sort of CRM system. This is where you're going to be communicating through. This is where your project schedule is going to be updated daily. This is where project progress photos are going to be completed, right? This is where your budget is held that can be reviewed so you can see in real time where your money is being spent. Everything should be tracked. And you, as a homeowner, should have that. And you, as a builder, if you don't have a proper CRM system at this point, shame on you. It's the 21st century and AI is everywhere. Use it. But review it weekly during construction, right? So you need to have a dialed in weekly meeting at a minimum, right? So this weekly meeting, you're going to be going through with your contractor, and don't be afraid to ask the questions, right? Where are we with schedule? Can I get a project status report, right? A project status report should be something that your contractor can provide you that shows them at least the essentials. Where are we with budget? Where are we with schedule? What have we been working on? What's coming up next? What are critical ordering items or critical milestones that you need to be involved in if you're the homeowner? If you're a homeowner listening to this, ask those questions, right? Because the budget isn't a ceiling that you're trying to hit. It's a tool for making decisions, and every choice has a cost. Want that imported tile? That's coming from somewhere else in the budget. Professional project managers treat budgets as living documents that guide priorities, not wish lists that magically accommodate every single impulse. Play a major role in your overall project scope, so this principle of project management should not be ignored or overlooked. This brings me to principle number 3, scheduling and estimating. Mr. and Mrs. Martin were promised their addition would be completed in 3 to 4 months tops, and they planned their daughter's graduation party for month 4. But guess what? Month 3 hits and framing still isn't complete, and there is no way that we are wearing graduation hats at this house. It's just not happening. Right? But the contractor keeps saying, we're working on it, but doesn't really offer any real timeline. And subcontractors show up whenever they feel like it. Materials arrive late. The graduation party, you have to move it to a restaurant up the road at a pretty significant expense, right? And I imagine that Mr. and Mrs. Martin here are probably pretty furious. And the contractor is offensive. If you're a contractor, maybe you've been in this situation. I don't know. Saying things like, well, construction always takes longer than expected. Maybe there's some validity to that, but I think that probably 99% of this stuff could have been avoided if we had a process in place, which is why we're talking about professional scheduling and focusing on when activities will be done, not when they must be done. This is a critical distinction, right? You're considering holidays, vacations, bandwidth, weather delays, and prior commitments. A detailed schedule might reveal that you have fewer actual working days than you thought. Maybe that 4-month project is actually 6 months when you account for 2 weeks of rain delays, spring break, permit processing time, material lead times, whatever that may be. We need to develop a comprehensive calendar and a project management system, like I said, our CRM system or your project management system, even at a bare minimum, a spreadsheet, an ongoing Gantt chart, whatever you need to use, but something is better than nothing. And map out every major activity. Account for dependencies or what we call predecessors. So these are activities that must happen before the next activity happens. So you can't install cabinets before you install drywall, right? You're not going to put up your trim work, your baseboards before the flooring goes in, unless maybe you're installing carpet and there's rare circumstances, but you get my point, right? And schedule subcontractors 2 to 3 weeks out with multiple reminders. So if you're a builder, you need to have constant touch points because there's nothing worse than sending out a schedule to your subcontractors saying be there in 3 weeks. And then there's no follow up 2 weeks later or 2 weeks into it or a week later. And you're just assuming that they're going to show up and be like, didn't you get my schedule? And they say, well, I got busy. I didn't know like the schedule. They're used to schedules moving all the time, right? They're used to schedules moving constantly, and that needle of when they need to show up changes on a regular basis. So you need to make sure that they are being scheduled in advance multiple times. I like to schedule 3 weeks out, 2 weeks out, a week out, and then usually a couple days before. Right? We need to build in buffer time, and assuming that everything does take a little bit longer than estimated, we need to have that buffer time in the schedule. And update the schedule weekly. This sets the baseline and critical path before starting. Communicate changes immediately, and don't let subcontractors discover that their start date changed when they show up to a job that isn't ready for them. We know that our subcontractors mean the world to us, and we cannot get the work done that we need to do without relying on them. So we need to make our subcontractors' work as easy as we possibly can for them on any given project. Here's a little shout out to all of our subcontractors out there. This fundamental principle of project management is essential to ensure you're not overcommitting your team to complete tasks in an unrealistic time frame. And proper scheduling prevents the single biggest source of client dissatisfaction, right? Missed deadlines. When everyone knows what's happening, when surprises decrease, trust increases. The schedule is your promise. Treat it accordingly. Brings me to principle number 4, defining team responsibilities. The Rodriguez family hired a general contractor, a plumber, an electrician, and a tile setter. Everyone showed up the same week. The electrician needed the walls open, but the framer was running a little bit late, and the plumber installed the rough-in plumbing exactly where the HVAC duct needed to go. The tile installer arrived a week early and left, charging a trip fee. Nobody knew who was responsible for patching the subfloor. All of these things, right? We've heard it, we've seen it, we've done it. Save yourself the pain. Fingers get pointed. Project stalls for 3 weeks while everyone is blaming everybody else. Right? This is why we have to map out every task and identify exactly who on your team, including the subcontractors, is responsible for what. This is why we create checklists. And this provides a comprehensive view of the smaller things that need to be accomplished and in what order. Professional project managers use tools like job log sheets, milestone schedules, rough-in checklists, and finish checklists. Every team member knows their deliverables. Every subcontractor signs an agreement spelling out their scope of work before it begins. And here's what this looks like in practice, right? The framer knows that they're responsible for the wall framing, the backing, insulation, and subfloor patching by specific dates. The electrician knows that they start rough in on week 3, day 2, and must be completed by week 4. Day 1 for the inspector. The plumber has the HVAC laid out and the coordinates of the rough in accordingly, and when you outline everyone's roles, you begin to see which deliverables need to be ready for others in order for them to begin their work, right? This is what we talked about earlier, is these predecessors, the things that need to happen. And we want to make sure that our subcontractors are getting in when they need to get in, not just showing up whenever they feel like it, but if their time is not respected, they will not respect your time. And if you're a homeowner listening to this, your subcontractors, if they do not respect your contractor because they are not staying organized, then it will directly impact you and your schedule as well. This is why it's so important. The lesson here is confusion is expensive, right? When nobody knows who's supposed to do what, work stops, costs increase, and relationships deteriorate. Clarity prevents chaos. Professional project managers proactively solve potential problems by changing schedules or shifting priorities based on team bandwidth before these problems explode into costly delays. And this brings me to principle 5, defining milestones, right? So Mr. and Mrs. Smith are 3 months into their basement renovation already, and they have no idea if they're on track or behind. The contractor says everything's fine, but they can't tell if that's true or not. They don't know anything. They've never been through this before, but workers seem busy, and is progress actually being made? Are they 30% done, 60% done? They don't know whether to be concerned or patient, and this uncertainty is eating at them daily. Worse, they're supposed to host Thanksgiving dinner in the basement, but they have no idea if that's realistic. Solution here, defining clear milestones, specific, measurable completion points that significantly progress. Professional project managers, they treat milestones as transparent progress markers that serve multiple purposes. They provide accountability, they enable tracking, boost morale, right? By celebrating achievements, getting everybody a hug, giving everyone a shared language for discussing progress. And if a milestone isn't, framing is mostly done, right? That is vague. We don't like vague. A milestone is framing is complete, pass city inspections, ready for mechanical rough-in by October 15th. It's binary. Either you hit it or you don't. For your basement renovation, milestones might be demolition is complete and debris removed week 1. Framing complete and inspected week 3. Mechanical rough-in and completed and inspected week 5. Drywall hung and taped week 7. You get my point, right? Final walkthrough, week 10. These milestones get reviewed with you regularly, and I mean regularly, weekly, to ensure that communication commitments are met and understood. When a milestone slips, you know immediately and you can adjust. When one's hit, you can celebrate, move forward, right? Give your contractor a big hug. Give your subcontractors a big hug. We're there. We're on the way. The lesson here, milestones transform ambiguity into clarity. They're especially beneficial during long, complex, or difficult projects when it's easy to lose sight of progress, right? While not absolutely required for smaller projects, they're an important principle and you should always consider them. They help ensure everyone stays aligned, motivated, and aware of where the project actually stands versus where it should be. This brings me to next principle number 6, managing changing priorities and business goals. Mr. and Mrs., we'll call them Wilson, right? They're halfway through their kitchen renovation when their daughter gets accepted to her dream college. But tuition deposit is due next month, and suddenly that $8,000 upgrade to custom cabinets feels irresponsible. But they've already ordered the material. What do? Contractor has scheduled installation, and changing course now means some sort of penalty, delays, and damaged relationships likely. They feel trapped by a decision that made sense 2 months ago, but it doesn't anymore. The solution? The ability to adapt to changing priorities is what separates good project managers from great ones. 50% of the project managers say shifting priorities are top issues impacting their organization. 50%. Life doesn't stop because you're renovating. Kids get into college, jobs get lost, parents get sick, priorities shift. And the best way to master this principle is remaining flexible and ready to change your project plan when something unexpected happens. This requires honesty, early communication, and when priorities shift, immediately discuss options with your contractor. Can you swap custom cabinets for semi-custom and maybe that saves a few extra bucks? I don't know. You need to be open and have these conversations as early on as possible with whoever it is that's building or renovating for you. Remember when I said earlier that clarity eliminates chaos, right? This is where so many people lose control of their projects. It's because they don't have clarity or they're not communicating as quickly as they need to on all of the key issues that need to be addressed. So somebody is working in the dark and somebody has an expectation that isn't going to be met. Professional project managers should build flexibility into their contracts and schedules precisely because they know change is inevitable. They usually use change order systems that make pivots manageable rather than, catastrophic. They maintain open communication channels so when life throws curveballs, solutions can be found quickly. To minimize impact on work in progress, you and your team need to be ready to adapt to keep your overall project on track, right? Whether that's an unexpected direction from the client, or if you're a client and you're listening to this, right? If you need to have the clarity to have the conversations that things are changing with your contractor as soon as possible because they can't read your minds. Believe it or not, even the really good ones, they can't read your minds. But sometimes, right, maybe a project doesn't align with the long-term vision anymore, and that's okay. Let's have those conversations. But the lesson here, rigidity breaks, flexibility bends, and your renovation exists within the context of your life, not separate from it. Professional project managers know that managing changing priorities isn't about preventing change. It's about responding to the change skillfully so the project can still succeed, just along a different path. Principle number 7, accountability and responsibility. The Williamson project is a disaster. The tile installer says the plumber didn't install the drain flange correctly. The plumber says the tile installer didn't follow his instructions. Never heard that one before, right? Like the electrician says that the framer didn't install the backing where specified, blah, blah, blah. The framer says the electrician specifications were unclear, blah, 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 blah. Meanwhile, the homeowners are getting 5 different stories and no one's fixing anything. And the project manager keeps saying, I'll look into it. 3 weeks passes and nothing gets resolved. Everyone's pointing fingers, but nobody's taking ownership. The solution? Accountability starts with the project managers, but extends to every team member. And when I mean team, I mean homeowners, subcontractors, designers, architects, engineers, right? Everybody on the team must be accountable for the work that they agreed to, the timelines that they agreed to, and they all need to be communicated with clearly, right? This is principle number 7, and it's critical for both project managers and everybody on site. The best way to succeed in this practice is constant communication. I'm going to say this probably a number of times throughout this podcast. You can get tired of me hearing it or tired of me saying it, but that's the truth. Is there's so much that can be just salvaged if you have proper communication and a proper communication cadence. We have a communication plan that we provide our clients. This shows these are all the people that are responsible for what. This is the cadence of whether it's going to be inspections that we're going to be doing, internal inspections, quality control inspections. This is the timeline that we're going to be using. This is how often they're going to be happening. And who needs to be there for these types of reviews, right? Communication is key. That's why we've developed a full communication plan, which every single one of our clients gets. And if you're a contractor listening, I encourage you to build a communication plan. And if you are a homeowner, I encourage you to ask your contractors how they intend to communicate. And that's just not even with you, not even as the contractor to the homeowner, but how do they communicate with their trades? How do they communicate with the architects? What is the plan? You want to know that nobody's winging it, right? Team members communicate with each other about what they need and when they need it. Project managers communicate with stakeholders to provide updates on things like project status and relay feedback to the teams so that there aren't any surprises. Professional project management companies use systems for this. We use what we call GSNRs or goal setting and reviews. These are internal meeting reviews where we know that we're supporting each other based on the project initiatives, right? There's transparent communication through project management software. We use our CRM system. I hope that you're using yours, job log sheets, budget trackers, and production plans. But everyone can see who committed to what and by when. When the plumber says, I'll have that done Friday, it's documented. Friday comes, it's either done or it's not. Zero confusion, no finger pointing, just facts. And this means if you're the homeowner, you need similar systems, right? Use your contract document conversations in email or text if you don't have a CRM system, right? All of our communication happens through our CRM system, but it needs to be in writing. If it's not in writing, it doesn't happen. Take photos, keep a project journal. When someone says, that's not my job, you should be able to point out the agreement that says whose job it is. The lesson here, accountability without systems is just wishful thinking. When everyone can see expectations clearly and track progress transparently, accountability happens naturally. Projects succeed when every person on the team takes responsibility for their deliverables and communicates honestly when problems arise. And this principle is important for you as a project manager and as a team member and as a homeowner. Brings me to principle number 8, retrospect and measuring success, right? So this is more related to if you are a contractor, not so much if you are a homeowner, but let's use these examples that I've come up with here. The Davidsons just finished their master ensuite, right? It came in around 12 grand over budget and 6 weeks late, and they're super frustrated, but glad it's done. Contractor's relieved to be finished with a difficult project and everybody moves on. But fast forward 6 months, contractor makes the same mistakes on another project. First of all, if you are a contractor and you're continuing to make the same mistakes over and over again and not learning from your lessons, shame on you. Because one of the biggest things that you as a homeowner want to be able to do is be proud of the company that you've worked with. And you as a contractor, you want to be proud of the work that you've done and the experience that you've provided your customers with, right? Referrals in the game of contracting is huge. And if your client refers you to a friend of theirs and you make the same mistake and it comes up again, all trust is going to be lost, right? Project management team is like a machine. If there are kinks or faults in the process, the machine won't run effectively. Professional project managers conduct what we call retrospectives after every single project. So this is diving into the project. Things like we review budget, right? We review who did well on the project, who didn't do well on the project, which subcontractor really stood out, how was the estimate, how was the budget built, how was the schedule built, and highlight all these things that went. We do that for every single project. What went well, what went maybe sideways, what didn't live up to our standard, because we know that we are only as good as our last at bat, and you're no different, right? And this isn't about blame. It's about improvement. What went well? What didn't? Where did we waste time or money? What will we do differently? These questions get asked systematically and they are documented. Everybody on the team is aware of it. So when we're talking about accuracy, communication, effectiveness, right, subcontractor performance, all of this stuff gets discussed at our team meetings with our team because everybody needs to understand what's been happening, where to make improvements. We need to learn from each other. And you as a contractor, you need to have a similar cadence. I don't care what it is that you do, when you meet, when you talk about it, but it needs to be done. You need to learn from your mistakes. We want to set a higher and higher benchmark for the industry. And if you're listening to this, I'm sure that you want to do the exact same thing. And we can do that together, right? The key is taking this information and applying it to the next project and the next project and the next project, whatever that is. We need to be making these incremental changes if you want to continue getting better and better and better. And that is what we are here to do, to provide better and better experiences for every single customer. And by understanding which projects are successful and which are failures, I like to call them learning, but you might be able to call them a failure. You can make changes to your processes and increase the likelihood of future success. And this creates a continuous improvement cycle where each project makes the next one better. The lesson here, experience without reflection is just repetition. The most successful construction firms treat every project as a learning opportunity. They document lessons learned, update their processes, train their teams on new approaches, and systematically eliminate recurring problems. This 8th principle is often ignored, and that's exactly why the same problems keep happening across the industry. Thank you for your time today. And listen, if you're a homeowner and you are considering building or renovating and you're interviewing contractors, talk to them about these 8 principles and ask them what it is that they have in place to make sure that your project is going to be a success. And contractors, if you're out there and you are listening and you want any more information on this, shoot us a DM on Instagram, get a hold of us. Maybe agree, maybe you don't, but I'd love to hear what you have to say. We're here to help. Everybody can increase this baseline together. We are here for you. We are here for the industry. And until next time, thanks for being here. Stay blessed. Cheers. Rock and roll.